So this is a doozy. It's now the beginning of September, and this happened on Mother's Day earlier this year. For the story to have proper context, I need to take you back 2.5 years. My wife, 27 years old, and I, 26, had been struggling in our marriage. We had just moved across the country to a new city. This city is one of the most violent places in America, and I, being from the rural Midwest, struggled a lot with my mental health upon arriving here, specifically with anxiety. My mental health put stress on our marriage, on top of her stress from being a graduate student going for her PhD. As part of her PhD, she was required to go to a remote area on the planet, trying to be vague, for 3.5 months. During those 3.5 months, our communication was limited to one Zoom call a week. It was hard on me. We had always been together since I was 18 and a freshman in college, on top of being in a place that ramped up my anxiety. She left for the remote place in October and came back in February. The first time I knew she cheated was when she got home. The first time we were intimate, she asked me to do things that were completely out of left field compared to what we used to do. We didn't have a vanilla intimate life at all, so these requests really made me question what she had been up to while she was away. Later that night, I sat her down and asked her point blank if she had cheated on me because of how strange those requests were. She told me she hadn't. She explained that while she was gone, she had been following a guy online who talked about ways to spice up intimacy, and she wanted to try them. I trusted my wife, and she showed me the guy online she'd been referring to. At the time, it made sense, and I loved and trusted my wife. Talk about some love glasses covering my eyes. Fast forward to April of this year. Over the past 2 years, I'd learned to cope with the anxiety that living in this city brought me, and I thought our marriage was doing better. We hardly argued. Intimacy wasn't as frequent as I'd like, but it was still often enough, and I thought we were doing well. We had gotten past the hard couple of years, and things seemed better. My best friend from high school, let's call him Dave, was getting married to his long-term partner back near my hometown in the Midwest. We took a trip out there for the wedding and visited my family. At the wedding, my wife met a guy, let's call him Frank, who was Dave's good friend during college. They had similar tastes in music, so they started talking about that. As this was a small, rural wedding, there weren't many people, and I could see my wife talking to Frank. I went up and introduced myself as her husband, and he seemed like a chill guy. They continued talking off and on during the reception whenever new music was being played. Then we left, and I drove us to our hotel a couple of hours away as we were flying out in the morning. About a week later, we were back home. I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water and saw that she had a Snapchat from Frank. I thought that was strange, but she said they were just friends, and again, I loved and trusted my wife, so I believed her. Mother's Day morning, it was a regular day. No issues or arguments for the last few months. We were intimate that morning, and then she left for lunch with her family, as her grandma and her dad live relatively close by. I was asked not to go. Again, I thought it was weird, but since her father and I never really got along, I figured he didn't want me there, or maybe she just wanted to have lunch with her dad and grandma alone. When my wife got home, she said we needed to talk, and then hit me with, "I want a divorce. I'm not happy." My world shattered. I spent the next 20, 30 minutes trying to convince her to try marriage counseling or a trial separation, but nothing worked. Eventually, I said, "Whatever is going on, we can fix it, unless you've cheated." That's always been a hard line for me. I don't tolerate cheating. Once the trust is gone, it's gone in my eyes. You can't come back from that. My wife proceeded to start hysterically bawling her eyes out, and I knew. I knew at that moment she had cheated. Now, I just wanted to know how bad it actually was. It turns out I was right to question her new intimacy requests when she got back from her trip. Not only that, but she had been intimate with several other people over the past 2 years. I was floored. I had been the sole provider of our household. She was a grad student with almost no income. My wife knew she was done with our marriage when she came back from that remote trip. But instead of leaving and getting a divorce then, she stayed for another 2 years so she could live more comfortably and have a nicer car. The lease was in my name, so I asked her to pack a bag and leave. I drove to a nearby parking lot, and it all hit me. I don't think I've ever cried like that before in my entire life. Mid-cry, I got a call from my brother reminding me to call my mom for Mother's Day. As soon as he heard me sobbing, he hung up and called my dad. My dad called me shortly after, and I explained everything to him. Saying it out loud to someone else made it all so much worse. Eventually, I gathered myself and went home. My wife was gone. She had packed a bag and left as I had asked her to. Fast forward 2 weeks. I had spoken to my boss about taking a leave of absence and going back to my family in the Midwest for a few weeks to gather myself and figure out who I was outside of being married to her. It was during this time that I found out my wife and Frank were sleeping together. Not only that, but within a week of everything happening, she had caught a plane to the Midwest, where Frank is from, and had been posting pictures of them together all over her social media. I had loved my wife so deeply, and this hurt me to my core. Fast forward to today. I am doing much better now than I was before. I still have days where I'm so hurt that it feels like I can't breathe, but most days, I'm doing okay. We agreed to an amicable divorce, where I let her keep the car and the money we had in our bank as long as she didn't touch my retirement account. I started over financially, and it's been a process, but I'm finally becoming stable again. We didn't have any kids, as we were waiting for her to finish grad school, and I thank God for that now. The divorce isn't quite final yet, but we're just waiting for the courts to do their thing. I accepted a new job back in the Midwest, in a city about 2.5 hours from my family, to get a fresh start. I've been in this violent city for 3.5 years now, and it's been the worst time of my life, between my anxiety and this divorce. I know I wasn't the perfect husband, but I never stopped trying to better myself for her. I never lied, cheated, or was violent during our 8.5 years together. The reason I'm writing this is that I hope it will help me find closure. I also want to ask if anyone has been through something similar. How did you learn to trust again? My biggest goal in life is to be a dad. It's something I've always wanted, but each time I try to talk to someone new, all I can think is, how is this new woman gonna f me over? I've been in therapy since the divorce was initiated, and it's helped with everything except this.